The vice president's remarks will come after she did not speak at what was supposed to be a celebratory event for her campaign last night before Mr. Trump took a commanding lead in the Electoral College, with battleground Wisconsin putting him over the 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. Her remarks will also cap her historically brief 107-day campaign, which began after President Biden dropped out of the race. NBC News also learning that Harris and Biden called the president-elect to congratulate him earlier today and discuss the importance of a peaceful transfer of power. While we await the vice president to come before the cameras, our senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is covering the vice president at Howard University. Gabe, what can we expect?
Hi there, Lester. Well, as we await the Vice President's remarks right behind me, we can tell you that this is the first time that we will see her publicly since yesterday afternoon when she was at DNC headquarters at a phone bank. But I was here yesterday, Lester, and I can tell you the mood here very different than it was yesterday, at least earlier in the night. We saw just such a deflated crowd here as the returns started to come in. Now, we can tell you that the Vice President was at her residence throughout the day and that she was working on her speech. Interestingly, a Biden aide tells me that she really didn't have this type of concession speech fully ready. She had expected instead to have a type of speech where she would tell her supporters to hold on because her campaign really expected this election results process to drag on for several days. But we understand that she did talk to former President Trump earlier today. She talked to him about the importance of a peaceful transfer of power and also the importance for him to be a president for all people, for all Americans. Now, also, President Biden also called former President Trump. We're told that he invited the former president, now president-elect, to the White House, but we're still awaiting details on that, on when that might happen. The staff is still working it out right now. Lester, I can tell you there's some cheering behind me. Again, any moment now, Vice President Harris is expected to come out here and deliver her remarks. As you said, very significant location, her alma mater. This is also the place where she announced her bid for president back in 2019. And she has also told interviewers that this location is very meaningful to her because it was the first time she ever ran for elected office when she was a freshman here at Howard University, and she ran for a representative here at the university. But again, we're waiting for those remarks, Lester, after a very disappointing day for Democrats.
All right, Gabe, we'll ask you to stand by. Yeah, we saw them making last-minute looking arrangements there on the stage, so we expect the vice president in just a few minutes. In the meantime, let me bring in Meet the Press moderator Kristen Walker, our senior national correspondent Tom Yamas, and our senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson. Tom, let me start with you. When I left you guys in the wee hours of the morning, we were still counting to see if it would be a sweep of the battleground states. What's the latest count?
We're still waiting, but as we're watching this and waiting for Vice President Harris to come out, the news has gotten worse for her. Obviously, the ultimate news, she's not going to the White House, but now we've learned NBC News has projected both Wisconsin and Michigan have also gone into Trump's column. He has taken down the blue wall once again. He is the only presidential candidate who's a Republican to take down the blue wall. He's done it twice since 1988. In modern historical times, we have not seen anything like this. So the news right now getting worse for her. We're still waiting on Arizona and Nevada as the vote is still being counted there.
All right, Kristen, let me bring into the conversation. We woke up in a different world today. This news is now being absorbed. People trying to tea leaf into the future. What are you hearing?
Well, we woke up to a political realignment. We saw that former President Donald Trump, now President-elect Donald Trump, had this incredibly decisive victory in which he expanded his reach and his support among key groups, Latino voters, women voters. In fact, President Biden did better with women voters than Vice President Kamala Harris did. We also saw him expand his reach into some blue areas, some blue counties, Lester, here in New York, in New Jersey, in Illinois. Things that are frankly being viewed as a wake-up call to the Democratic Party this morning. I have been talking to my sources who say that there needs to be a reckoning within the Democratic Party, that they need to take a hard look at these results and a hard look at why they did not resonate with voters, why their message did not speak to these key voters, working class voters, voters of all different backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and they need to rethink how they are messaging, particularly when it comes to issues like the economy and immigration.
And Hallie, as you flip around the channels today, you hear all these discussions about what did he really mean? Things that promises he made that have been disquieting for many people. What do we know?
It looks as though, based on everything that he has said publicly, his second term is likely to start as his first term did. Controversially, he has said on day one he will implement mass deportations. There's an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. Doesn't say, and has been pressed for specifics. How do you pay for that? Probably billions of dollars. Who actually does it? Who actually executes these deportations? That's not clear. Do you separate families? There's a lot of question marks out there. There's a discussion of who ends up in his inner circle. I think you can expect to see Trump loyalists. Keep in mind that, and Kristen and I know this from having covered him in 2017 after Inauguration Day, a day that you were in D.C. for too, Lester. He brought in his first-term cabinet. Multiple members of that cabinet departed, have since argued against a second term for former President Trump. It's not going to look like that in all likelihood this time around. He will bring in people who are loyal to him, people who he is comfortable with in his orbit. You can expect to see people like immigration hardliner Stephen Miller. You can expect to see in his broader orbit MAGA firebrand Steve Bannon. You can expect to see people like Elon Musk, people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., perhaps in charge of health agencies here, as former President Trump has. President-elect Trump now has had him on the campaign trail. Other policies. He wants to essentially overhaul the federal government, do away with the Department of Education, look at ways to cut costs dramatically. It could be a real sea change in the way that the government works and functions, with political opponents concerned about the possibility of retribution. As President-elect Trump said just a few days ago on the campaign trail, it may look, in his words, nasty, especially at the beginning as he comes on board here as we look ahead to January and February. I'll tell you that in my text messages and phone calls, even in the last few minutes here, it is all about, on the Republican side, what's the transition like? Who ends up in which positions? There's the jockeying. Who's the chief of staff? Who goes up for the secretary of this or that? There's a lot of discussion about the next step forward in the future here. I'm also interested to see what Vice President Harris will say here. We saw former Congresswoman Republican Liz Cheney just today say, listen, we have a democracy. There is a new president-elect. We will work to protect the Constitution. Does the vice president strike a similar tone and talk about upholding the importance?
Well, I mean, obviously she'll concede the race question. Will she concede some of the things we're now talking about the Democratic Party and how it viewed the electorate up until last night?
I doubt that her speech will look into the strategy of her campaign, but I do anticipate, as Allie's saying, as Liz Cheney, her Republican supporter, signaled earlier today, that she will try to strike a unifying tone. And as we sit here and watch the crowd gather at Howard University, I can't help but think of all the parallels to 2016 when Hillary Clinton came out the day after Donald Trump effectively won and delivered a concession speech that she had not written because she was not prepared to lose. Now, that's not to say that Harris was entering this election with the same sense of what I think some people felt was a bravado on the part of Hillary Clinton. But Hillary Clinton said in her concession speech, I hope that he, Donald Trump, will be a successful president for all Americans. Hillary Clinton very notably struck a unifying tone in her remarks. And so it was such an important moment for the country when she did that. It was such a stark contrast with 2020 when former President Donald Trump did not concede. He still has not conceded. He did not attend the inauguration, Lester. So this was a very different transition of power that we witnessed in 2020 and obviously beset by the violence of January 6th. I do think that the vice president, I've been talking to lawmakers, and they say they are anticipating and hoping they hear that.
And we should acknowledge this, right? Because along with Kristen was saying, I mean, the Democrats, no one likes to lose. Every Sunday we root for our football teams to win.